Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for ActiveTrust Cloud 2.1. I'm pleased to introduce our presenters, Troy Hager, Director of Product Management for SaaS Applications, and Blair Rampling, Product Manager, who's also with us. He's answering questions in the Q&A, and they will be doing a demo later on in the program. Now here's Troy.
I just want to start out by thanking everyone for taking time out of your day to come to our ActiveTrust Cloud 2.1 demo series. We're happy today to show you more about our recent release of ActiveTrust Cloud. We'll provide a little bit of an overview up front to level set for some of the first-time attendees to our demo series, and then we'll dive into a lot of the details that you're all here to see. So let's take a look at today's agenda for the session. First, we're going to, as I mentioned, cover ActiveTrust Cloud as a solution overview, talk about the market need, the value proposition of the product, why customers are moving to ActiveTrust Cloud. Then we'll take a look at the solution itself briefly. Most of the time we want to save for the actual demo, but we'll look at some of the key capabilities of the product and how they address kind of that market need. And then we'll focus next on the deployment options. We'll cover how ActiveTrust Cloud can be deployed today, both in the cloud for your various deployments, as well as our hybrid architecture. Then we'll wrap up with the slide portion and presentation portion of the session with an update on what's new in ActiveTrust Cloud 2.1. We'll move into the live demo performed by Blair Rampling, the product manager for ActiveTrust Cloud, and then we'll start with the Q&A session. So what are some of the primary methods of exploiting DNS? The first that we focus on is data exfiltration and tunneling. Customers today, I think we've seen in the industry and in the news, a lot of focus on data being exfiltrated out of different industries, whether it's government or healthcare or retail, or right, and we've even seen latest things happening with other vendors. So a big area of focus, right? Data exfiltration, preventing data and the bad guys from overloading DNS queries to take confidential information over time off of your network. The second area that we focus on is APTs and malware, zero-day attacks, malware proliferation, the spread of malware across your network, the infections of hosts, the costly time to remediate these threats. There are other areas that we're not going to go into here that we also cover. I'll speak briefly of them as we go through other slides, things like ransomware and phishing and bot attacks. And so there's quite an extensive list of threat classifications that the product is designed to prevent. These are just two of the primary ones. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the DNS-based security challenges that our customers face today. In talking with customers, number one is the prevention of these DNS threats through DNS, specifically data exfiltration, spread of malware, ransomware, all the different, the threats are always changing. The bad actors are always updating their methodologies over DNS. So having a solution in place to identify I think we have 240 different threat properties now, that families of threats that we're tracking on inside of the product, as well as our big data analytics component. So it's a very advanced number of methods that bad actors are doing. So that's the first focus area. Threat intelligence is a second area. Many of our customers today are struggling with pulling trusted and reliable and accurate threat intelligence from a number of different threat intelligence providers, pulling feeds and data sets down to their local environment, having to kind of collate and curate these different sets of data in different formats with different amounts of metadata can be very difficult for customers to manage and fuse together, and then utilizing that data inside of all of their different security applications, whether it be email filtering, next-gen firewalls, DNS firewalls, there's SIM, right? There's a number of different security endpoint products and solutions that many of our customers deploy, and having access to high-quality, reliable and accurate threat intelligence is key. And then the third area that we focus on is the slow threat remediation. Many of our customers have small teams, don't have enough staff as they're spending time doing all of these other types of activities. Often the remediation, lack of context along with threats, they're getting data from all their logs from all these different solutions, and they don't have access to effective tools to allow them to do threat research on the threats that they're seeing, to be able to help them understand the context of these threats from all these solutions that they deploy, and to be able to prioritize and take action with the resources that they have in their SOC teams. So these are the three kind of security challenges our product is focused to assist customers with. We'll hopefully talk more about those as we go forward. So how do we help customers with some of those challenges? These are 5 of the key areas that the product solution focuses on that directly speak to those challenges. The first being the prevention piece, the DNS firewall, the DNS query examination. That's where we block the CNC, malware, downloads, phishing attacks, ransomwares, all the different threat vectors and classifications that our product's designed to identify and block. The second is stopping that data exfiltration and tunneling from occurring and data being taken off of your network. The third area is through the use of our actionable threat intelligence and investigation, being able to get that rich metadata off of the Infoblox products, both whether a customer is using our DDI and powering their network and combining that with our DNS security, then we can provide additional direct information on on the metadata that we see in your network, things like DHCP and MAC addresses and extended attributes within the NIOS grid. The last 2 are the unified policy management, being able to go into one area and set up your DNS security policy in one location very easily for your entire organization, and being able to have access to all of the DNS activity, both all the queries, the responses, the hits from the solution, all in one unified location, as opposed to picking up logs all over the networks and not to mention roaming users and branch offices. So having that single pane of glass is key. And then lastly, orchestration through our partner alliance program to all of our ecosystem. We focus heavily on taking these threats and our threat intelligence and making that actionable through your ecosystem. Let's take a look at some of the deployment models in our hybrid architecture. So we're going to start on this in the center of the screen and just look at some of the major components that make up ActiveTrust Cloud. First, starting in the center here, as we talked about, preventing using our DNS firewall is key. That loads through our intelligence that we organically create and through all of our partners that work with Infoblox, both organically as well as our marketplace to bring in other valued threat intelligence providers, as well as our threat insight, big data analytics models that we layer on top of the firewall to analyze your activity and look at things from pattern matching to tunneling, exfiltration, all the different kinds of algorithms that Infoblox has patented as our big data analytics inside of the threat insight component. Once the firewall, of course, is receiving all your recursive DNS queries, we also have a full public API stack, our tied data exchange, which is threat intelligence data exchange, which we'll talk about more, which is how you can take data out of our cloud to use in other security ecosystem products, as well as we'll take now a look at how the remote offices here on the right can now connect up along with roaming clients, as well as your corporate networks, where you may also be running our Infoblox grid and DDI solution. By bringing all your corporate networks, roaming offices, and roaming users all into one seamless integration here with ActiveTrust Cloud, we're able to provide that unified security policy and admin support, the SOC capabilities for your security team to use our threat research tools and our reporting, and to try and orchestrate that out to you into your SIM and other applications for follow-up and workflow improvements. So that's a quick overview of the different deployment options and methodologies used in ActiveTrust Cloud today. Now let's take a quick look at Infoblox's best-in-class hybrid architecture. This is one of the key differentiators of the Infoblox approach. Not only do we have all of the cloud solution that we just reviewed on the last slide and prior up here in the upper left, but now we add in the layering of, for Infoblox Grid and network customers, the ability to communicate directly with our grid to share grid and network-based attribution up to our DNS cloud protection through forwarding, discovery, protecting roaming users, providing that additional extensible attributes when a DNS threat is found to help customers further mitigate and take that remediation that we talked about earlier. Customers can also run local caching and DNS firewalls on grid and in the cloud. That allows for customers to have a unique use cases for the Infoblox solution to both protect some of the more local threats at the local level, but also send up all their activity to the cloud and connect it up with their roaming and branch offices in a unified, seamless integration. So just to recap some of the differentiation of the Infoblox approach, we have the central policy management, we have that consistent and unified reporting in the cloud that captures not only your DNS data, but also combines it with the rich metadata from the Infoblox grid for Infoblox DDI customers. We have that kind of complete and unified lifecycle view for as a user maybe is connected on-prem and then goes into a roaming state as they take their laptop out of your environment, that they're always connected and protected with that unified approach. We have the deep visibility of those end hosts, providing that source IP address, the MAC address, device type, other types of DHCP fingerprint, things that we can provide as Infoblox through the joint solution of our DDI and DNS product lines. All of which helps you prioritize and remediate these threats faster as they are detected and blocked in the system. Let's take a quick look at some of the ActiveTrust 2.1 key features. So one of the big features that we just launched in 2.1 was the new content categorization control. This allows customers to expand their use of ActiveTrust Cloud beyond just the threat areas today like malware and exfiltration and tunneling and ransomware, but also expand that now into more policy-based decisions at the corporate level. Customers can go in and, as shown here on the screen, set up different content filters, if you will, the content categorization filter by selecting from over 104 different categories, including things shown here like crime and drugs and anything like social media, all the way down to pornography or online gambling. So it's a very rich interface. Customers can come in and select the policies that match with their corporate policy and enforce that to any areas of their network or users or employees. The other new feature that we're very proud to have launched is including our threat intelligence data exchange, otherwise known as TIDE, as a bundled feature with the ActiveTrust Cloud solution. This allows customers to be able to take our highly valued intellectual property and threat intelligence data and stream that data out of our cloud in a number of different formats designed specifically to be able to be used in like your SIM or your email products, filtering products, or your next gen firewalls. So you're able to basically pull data in, for example, in like a Ceph format to ingest directly in your SIM. Part of how Infoblox differentiates is that we want to help protect not only through our DNS products, but we want to help customers protect their entire network. and we allow that through the use of our intellectual property and data feeds in your other solutions. The other new features we'll cover a little more quickly. We're happy to have our new API custom lists feature. This allows customers to programmatically interact with whitelist and blacklists within our product to be able to set up that information in cases of like FireEye or other types of solutions that you have, or your SOC team, where you identify your own organic blacklist that you want to also be able to set and manage consistent policy within the product. Infoblox and McAfee, we have a very large partner ecosystem. You can learn more about that at our community.infoblox.com site, as well as on our public website to look at the over 100 different partners and integrations that we have across not only cloud, but also security vendors and orchestrations. Recently, we've done a lot of work with McAfee. We wanted to kind of highlight that here for you, working with McAfee on a lot of their different solutions, including DXL, EPO, ESM. They're pretty much their entire McAfee suite, which also in that, if you're a McAfee customer, work with our sales and our engineer team to learn more about all the McAfee solution integrations that we have today. A little bit what we wanted to highlight on the web gateway and EPO. So first, web gateway allows of several different use cases here. We're not going to spend the time to go through this in detail today, but I did want to at least point out that for McAfee web gateway customers, DNS is a great way to protect up front and offload some of the traffic from the web gateway to detect threats found up front prior to web gateway's deeper inspection. We've got a lot of information. We have new videos coming out on our community site to learn more about how all of these integrations work. So please, again, look forward to that on the community site. EPO is also a big integration for us with McAfee. We're able to take threats that we detect in DNS and push them directly through DXL into EPO, into the EPO dashboards to provide that common workflow and orchestration. We're also able to use EPO's distribution to just deploy the ActiveTrust Cloud client onto endpoints for roaming users and for our customers who want to push out our endpoint client, or as opposed to using our forwarding and other capabilities inside the corporate networks. So we're happy to be working with McAfee on so many levels that we wanted to have a special call out that if you're a McAfee shop, please work with our team to learn more about all the integrations available. And lastly, we'll just cover in NIOS 8.3 shipping this summer, we're going to have direct integration with the ActiveTrust Cloud to be able to forward these DNS queries and receive data back and forth as far as DNS caching is built into the actual NIOS software. Today, you have to deploy our DFP forwarding proxy as kind of a second step for on-prem to forward the DNS queries up to our cloud. We're going to be removing that layer and having that natively baked into our NIOS grid. So we're going to be looking forward to that as well.
Sure, let's have a look at how ActiveTrust Cloud is configured. So the first thing is we need to get DNS queries into ActiveTrust Cloud, and there's a number of ways to do that. So the first and most basic one is by using just networks. Networks define the outside address of a network in your environment. So it would be basically the public NAT address of a firewall. So we could see all of those DNS queries that are coming out of that NAT address, and you just send all your queries to our Anycast IP address. The issue with that is we can't identify which specific client machines are sending that traffic. So when it comes up in the reports, you'll only see that as the source. But we can set policies and do enforcement against these. The second one, as we mentioned earlier, are ActiveTrust endpoints. So these are clients that run on either Mac or Windows machines. I have one of those configured here. I can see information about it. I can see the MAC address, the user that was last reported to have been logged in. I can see the OS version and the IP address. And then the third way of getting queries into the system is through the DNS forwarding proxies. And the DNS forwarding proxies are small virtual machines that run in your environment, and your clients will use those small virtual machines as their DNS resolvers. So when those queries come into the DNS forwarding proxy, they're then sent up to ActiveTrust Cloud. So with both the DNS forwarding proxy and the ActiveTrust endpoint, we take the client system's IP address and MAC address, and we send that along with the query. We encrypt all of that and send it encrypted up to ActiveTrust Cloud. ActiveTrust Cloud does the processing, makes sure everything is okay, decides on a course of action whether it's going to allow that DNS query to be responded to or not, and then sends that response back to the client. We do strip all of the client identifying information in the ActiveTrust Cloud. We never send any of that client identifying information out to the internet when we go and recurse those DNS queries. There's a couple of other things to initially set up. One of those is bypass domains. So for all of your internal domains, whether they're Active Directory domains or any other DNS that you're hosting internally, we set those as what's called a bypass domain. In that case, if you have an ActiveTrust endpoint, those queries will be sent to whatever the default resolver is on that local machine, whether that's set by DHCP and then it sends it to your, say, your Active Directory DNS or to your local Infoblox DNS. And then with a DNS forwarding proxy, you configure where to send those. So you would send those from the DNS forwarding proxy to the same local internal DNS servers. Another couple of things we can do, we can configure how we do redirects. So a redirect is one of the options for an action you can take on a hit against one of the policies. We can either redirect to a default page, which is just an Infoblox branded redirect page. You can create a custom redirect where you put in your own HTML and that shows up for your clients, or you can actually redirect to an IP. So we can have up to 5 custom redirect IPs or domains. And what happens is the client will get this response back in their DNS query rather than getting whatever the proper DNS response is. So this could be anything. It can be a local machine, a local web server on your environment. It can be a honeypot, anything like that. So when we look at how ActiveTrust Cloud is configured, ActiveTrust Cloud is basically a set of security policies. And all a policy is, it defines the scope that the policy is applied to and the rules that are applied to that policy. So there are a few different types of rules. 2 of those are a custom lists. Excuse me. We can create a custom list that contains custom domains. So if I call this new list, I can add any domains or IP addresses I want to this. If I save that, I can now take this new custom list. I can see what domains and addresses in, and I can apply that to a policy. And we'll look at that in a second. The other thing I can do is I can create content category filters. Content category filters consist of groups of types of content categories. So I can either select the entire group, or I can go in and I can select just subgroups within that or subcategories. I can take that, configure the categories I want in this filter, and I can save that. And now I can apply this filter to a policy. When I look at the actual security policies themselves, I can create a new one. I have to decide who it applies to. So it can apply to a network, which is that NAT use case, which is all traffic coming out of a NAT firewall. I can apply it to a DNS forwarding proxy. And then there's always a policy that applies to the ActiveTrust endpoint clients. Inside the policy, once I've decided what the scope of the policy is, I have a series of rules and I can decide what the actions on those are. There is a global default policy that will set all of these by default, but then I can go in and override that and set it how I want. These are all feeds. All of the ones without the little X are from ActiveTrust Threat Intelligence. These are the feeds that we provide. We can see how they're all set. I can decide what I want to do with them. I can block, I can allow, which just lets it pass completely and ignores it. I can redirect that traffic to any of either my web page or my custom redirect IPs, or I can decide just to log it, and that allows the traffic through, but puts a log entry into the security log. When I look at my content filters and my custom lists, I can add the custom lists that I defined earlier. I can decide what I want to do with that traffic. I can use custom lists to do things like whitelisting and blacklisting, or I can have custom blocks. Those custom lists can be defined through the API as well. So if you want to programmatically take entries into those custom lists from other products, you can do that. The other thing I added was a category filter, so I can add that as well, and I want to block all of the content that was in the category filter that I defined. And when I save this policy is going to be applied to this scope, and it's going to have that series of rules. So we can see how that actually works. We can have a look at a Windows machine. So this system here has the ActiveTrust endpoint installed. I can see that it's connected. The status is protected. That means it can talk to the ActiveTrust Cloud itself. And then I can do a DNS query. I can see that this comes back with the A record that's for google.com. That came back normally as expected. But if I do against something that I know is bad, I know that this is a malware domain, I'm getting the redirect address that was defined in the custom redirects. We can look at the same thing for DNS forwarding proxy. So if I do a dig against the DNS forwarding proxy that was defined earlier, which is this one. That comes back normally as well with the A record. And if I do the same thing for the known bad domain, in this case, I'm not getting that redirect. I'm getting an NX domain. So the reason for that is if we look at the security policies and we look at the one for roaming users, I know that the icar.co is in this base feed. And for ActiveTrust endpoints, this is getting redirected to that custom block. But if I look at the policy that affects this DNS forwarding proxy and I look at the base feed, I'm getting blocked in that case. That's why that NX domain came back for the DNS forwarding proxy and the redirect came back for the Windows client. So once I have everything configured and I'm blocking traffic how I want, I can start to look at the reports. We have the security report. Digging into these tabs, I can see the top devices by the number of hits. So I can see that I have certain devices here that have very high hit counts. That's usually indicates an issue. A device with a very high hit count like this will indicate that there is some kind of infection, there's some kind of blocking happening. Lower ones are usually false positives, but the investigation will always be into the ones with a high hit count. And if I click on one of them, it actually drills down and I can see all the hits that are from that device. And I have filtering options across here as well. I can look at the same thing by users. So when we are reporting the logged in user from the ActiveTrust endpoints, I can see those users by hit count. I can also see it by networks if I'm using that NAT use case. I can see it by threat classes. So that's the threat classes that are defined in our feeds. And then I can see the policies that are configured and what the hits are against those policies. When I look into those in detail, I can actually see the list of hits and we'll filter it on the two systems that I was just using. So I can see that my ActiveTrust endpoint had that hit against icar.co. I can see when it was detected, the MAC address of the system. If you are connecting into Infoblox NIOS on-premise grid, you can get DHCP fingerprint information. We can see the Windows version based on what the ActiveTrust endpoint is reporting and the user. Query type, the threat class and threat property that come out of our feeds. I can see the policy I'm hitting, what action was taken, and actually the feed itself that was affected. And then for this hit here, this is the one that came out of the DNS forwarding proxy. And I could see the source address of the client machine that actually sent the request. I can see the same information about what the hit was and what it was relevant to. And we can set the time period that we want to search on, and then we can actually use these time scrubbers to define that in more detail. The other report is a category report. The category report shows the same thing except for content categories. So I can see that there was a hit from the ActiveTrust endpoint machine, that Windows machine, and it was a query to this here that's defined in the games category. So that's all of my blocks against my content filters are in this report. I have 3 other reports that are more detailed. The malware report specifically shows DNS messenger malware. The command and control report shows domain generation algorithms and fast flux attacks. So I can see that I had a series of queries in here that were a domain generation algorithm caused those. So I can see that specifically in this report. And then data exfiltration shows me DNS tunneling. So I can see when there's DNS tunneling traffic specifically going out back and forth. And that shows me, I can see this machine here has some kind of DNS tunneling happening. The other reports are total DNS requests. I can see all of the DNS traffic and an aggregate summary of that. And yeah, that's about it. I will pass control back to Troy for the rest of the.
So in summary, what we covered today was that in the early section that ActiveTrust Cloud allows you to protect your entire organization, your corporate networks, your roaming users, workers from home, remote locations, branch offices, all in kind of this single seamless integration for policy control and reporting. It provides you with the flexibility in deployment, the differentiation that Infoblox provides in working with not only the ActiveTrust Cloud and DNS security, but also leveraging for DDI-based network customers of Infoblox, bringing some of that rich metadata into the threat reporting and remediation process to really help expedite and make teams productive. We talked about being able to stream the threat intelligence, not that powers DNS, into your local ecosystem, whether that be on-prem or other cloud services that you have licensed to protect your organization, and the value of aggregating all of that data for you from all the research companies out there and being able to stream that out in these very specific formats to leverage into those solutions. And then we talked about how it provides end-to-end visibility across your entire, all your different devices and users, whether they're on the corporate network or outside roaming. Just want to highlight a couple of other materials, next steps. You know, we do offer a 30-day trial of the service, so contact your Infoblox reps and sales engineers to learn more about how to take advantage of it. Our trials are very easy to set up. In a lot of cases, they can be set up within, you know, same day or a day or two of effort. Really, normally in a trial, what customers focus on is that initial forwarding of their DNS queries, which can be done in minutes in some cases, to really first just understand more about what are all the different threats that they're unaware of that are happening over DNS, and get us to be able to provide that insight, if you will, through all of those feeds in more of a logging mode to be able to really get their hands around the value of the solution. Customers also take a look at our threat intelligence, our research tools, and learn more about how they can help their security operations folks be more productive. And then lastly here, we do have the link, and we'll be sharing a follow-up out to all of the attendees on a lot of this information. If you did want to, you know, enroll in a trial, that link's provided for you as well. So I just want to take the time before we jump into Q&A to thank everyone for joining our live demo series for ActiveTrust Cloud. We're going to now use some of the remaining time to field some live questions from the audience. So I'll be moderating that, and I'll answer some, and we'll have Blair Rampling also jump in and answer a few. So again, if you have questions, you know, feel free to post them at this time. The first question we have here is, where is ActiveTrust Cloud hosted? So ActiveTrust Cloud is hosted globally. We have data centers through AWS in different regions of the world. For more information on all of our data centers or regions near you, or more information on that, feel free to follow up with, the ActiveTrust Cloud sales engineers and reps. They can get you more specifics on. I'm not sure if your question's about specific countries or within countries where, East Coast, West Coast. I mean, we do have in the U.S., we have East Coast, West Coast. We're expanding our services into even more of the remote locations, if you will, globally. So happy to answer more about that as a follow-up. What is your IPAM offering shown? What is your on one of the earlier slides? So Infoblox. So I'll answer that, and if there's more here, we'll have Blair chime in. So Infoblox, one of our core capabilities and product lines is our DDI IPAM offering, where customers leverage Infoblox and the Infoblox DDI grid to power their IP address management, DDI, DNS, all of the different kind of core network services. That consists of things like detecting detecting devices as they join your network, managing leases and IP hosts, and a quite extensible list of features. That's kind of our core product line, and it has been for quite a number of years. So to learn more about that, definitely contact your representative. What the approximate size of your install base for how long has the product been around? So ActiveTrust has been around for, I want to say, around 6 years. We provide these services that we talked about today, the threat intelligence, the big data analytics, modeling services. We're not going to get into the exact number counts, but we have around 8,000 clients for all of our products. And I believe in the area of 2,000, somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 is the current number of users customers who are using our ActiveTrust product lines. And so the cloud product line has been around since 2016. And we, different areas and components of it work with our on-prem, and that's all been part of the solution that we've been deploying for a number of years now. Let's see.
Troy, there's one that came in the chat. In what fields are your top 3 to 5 clients? What verticals, like legal, medical, retail, for ActiveTrust Cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we work in a lot of industry spaces and markets. Clearly, financial services is always an early adopter, with banking and regulations, and really focus on consumer protection. We have a large number of banking customers, in particular federal. Infoblox Federal is another big area that we work with, providing customers in the federal agencies and federal space with threat intelligence services around DNS and the things that we talked about with our actionable intelligence and leveraging. In fact, a lot of these same agencies are partners. Their data, like some of the DHS data in particular, is included. Infoblox has been selected as a authorized distributor of some of the federal data sets. So that's another advantage and differentiation for us as well. We also, to round out some of the other areas, we're seeing a lot of attention in retail, healthcare in particular. We're doing things with chains and automotive, industrial. So there's really DNS has been pretty widely accepted now in the industry as an area that needs specific security around it. And so there's a lot of adoption across all the different marketplaces, but I would say those are some of the top areas that we see a lot of activity with customers in. Is there any other questions, Rick? I've been trying to watch there was something about an integration here. What sorts of integrations are available for Palo Alto and next-gen firewall deployment? Same question for Fire. So let's just talk about our ecosystem. Sounds like the question, to rephrase it, is how does Infoblox work with our ecosystem? And first thing I would say to that is we have a wide, very large partner ecosystem where we actually are certified with partners with direct integrations from our products to those partners. Like the McAfee example we talked about earlier, we work with a variety of other partners. For instance, in vulnerability, we work with Qualys and Rapid7. We work with Tenables Security Center. We work with NAC Solutions, Forescout, and Aruba. We work with Cisco. We work with a whole variety. To learn more about our ecosystem, you should visit our community website at communityinfoblox.com, as well as our public website. To specifically address the question on how customers can stream out into Palo Alto, we also have a Palo Alto integration up in our community site. You can stream IP address data. You can stream next-gen firewall feeds. Customers typically write a script as an example. I mean, the custom examples can be talked about in more detail on how different customers are using these services. But the simplest way to think about it is you can write a very simple script that we provide through our community, take that down to your location, regardless of what end solution you want to work with. In the case of a SIM, for instance, I'll use as an example, you could have a script run that says every 5 minutes, go pull from Infoblox Threat Intelligence, the aggregated, collated data set of all the bad domains and blacklisted domains Infoblox has, which we're talking about, millions of records every day flowing through our systems from not only organic Infoblox, but other partners as well that work in our marketplace. You can stream that data that you have license access to every 5 minutes down to, you can sit all the way through our API stack, like give me all of the bad domains and host names Infoblox has seen, observed, or reported in the last 5 minutes. Deliver that data to me in a CEF file format, and then I can take that CEF file format along with all the metadata, why it's in our list, when it was observed, what's the criticality, the priority, the severity. So there's a whole bunch of different metadata that we provide with our threat intelligence, and you can stream that right into your SIM in this case to help correlate against other log and other data that you're pulling from your web logs or your email logs, right? So you can leverage that. In the other example of Palo Alto, you could write a script that says every 5 minutes, pull me all of the IPs that we see doing DOS-based activity from external networks. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to put it into maybe my IP firewall. So there's a lot of different ways, use cases. Again, I encourage you to speak with their security engineers, review our community site to learn more.